Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me live and in studio, we're all, well, no Kelly, but at least we're together and we're
on location.
And we're in a different studio than usual. Back in Studio A, it is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat writer. It is Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
You know, it was a no practice day, a day off.
That's got to be nice.
Got to sleep in a little bit, which was nice. And now ready to talk some Flyers hockey.
I feel like maybe it was scheduled well in advance, but I feel like this is a day off where John Tortorella is like, I don't even, you know what? Let's all not be around each other for a day. Let's all just let's reconvene on Saturday. How about that? Like, I feel like it's a perfect day for that.
Yeah,
it's crappy weather out. Like, everyone stay home. Let's just not do it today. And I want to hit on, so they're off practice today. So that was the first thing I was going to ask, is any injury updates, but nobody convened today. So
Correct.
There's nothing. We will see with the lineups tomorrow. If York is back, if Andre is back, whatever it might be.
If Morgan Frost makes his
return, who's to say? Not injured, just in the doghouse.
Yeah, he's just there.
Sleeping on top of it like Snoopy.
I wouldn't quite say that he's chilling, because I'm sure that he isn't.
Do we have?
He isn't happy at all right now.
No Coors Light today.
He is just kind of sitting around waiting for the coaching staff to decide he should get back in.
And honestly, like, again, I'm done with the concept of Morgan Frost. Ready to pull that trade lever as soon as possible.
No, I don't know if that's going to happen, William.
But they have no centers. They have
centers.
They don't have anyone who's any good.
They don't have scoring centers.
They don't have anyone who belongs playing 18 minutes a game trying to attempt to score goals.
I'm just saying, like, you and Kelly said that, and my point is that they do have multiple players who can play the center position. They don't have multiple players that can play the center position in a top 6 NHL role.
I would say they have 2 natural centers. Mm-hmm. One is a 3C and one is a 4C. Mm-hmm. And the other 2 guys are wingers who are capable of taking faceoffs.
Yeah. I think Cates and Lawton can play the position now to varying degrees of value. Yeah. But I think Scott Lawton is an above average 4th line center. He's probably a below average 3rd line center, and Noah Cates is probably a decent 4th line center.
Exactly. Yeah. They have no centers.
Yeah. I just think it's an inaccurate statement. They have centers. They don't have scoring centers.
None of them are any good. So the injury thing, we don't know any of that. I am just looking at their cap situation. This is just house cleaning for me.
Okay.
I have the Flyers. The cap ceiling's what, 88 mil?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I have them at just under 86 million right now.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem like either Puckpedia or Cap Wages. They're doing a great work since we lost. What the hell was it?
Cap Friendly.
Cap Friendly. Yeah.
Cap Friendly.
Since we lost our good friends Cap Friendly. Mm-hmm. Cap Wages, Puckpedia, they're doing a decent job, but it doesn't seem quite like they have the sources or the resources for the constant updates that we were used to with Cap Friendly. They still have Ryan Johansen on the books. So if you take that out, it's just enough to keep Ryan Ellis off of LTIR.
But they don't have Ryan Johansen on the books.
That's
the thing.
And so with him off, it's probably just right around enough to keep Ryan Ellis off LTIR. Mm-hmm. They're not in LTIR as far as you know right now,
As far
as
I know, they are not.
All right. Just wanted to, something I was looking at today.
That was the whole goal.
Yeah, that's the point.
It was a big reason why they did the whole Ryan Johansen thing, which is still kind of in a state of limbo. To explain where the Ryan Johansen thing is at, the contract is not on their books.
Yes.
That contract is not counting against the Flyers' books. However, the Flyers on some level know
it's sort of an escrow.
Until it's resolved, there is the possibility that that contract could, I mean, if they were to lose the negotiation and lose the arbitration, then the contract goes back on their books in full. I don't think that's likely. It seems like the most likely resolution to this is that there will be some sort of settlement, and in that case, there probably will be some money that gets put back on the Flyers' books, some, but not all of it.
At which point, based on where they are, they might have to dip into LTIR, but we will see when that all translates. That should be coming up, right?
Well, according to Elliot Friedman, no one is rushing on it.
Okay.
I laid out on allphly.com after the whole thing broke, and then we found out that the NHLPA was going to fight it. I laid out everything. Basically, eventually, if nothing happens, if no settlement happens, this will get in front of an arbitrator. However, there are lots of little, like, this side has 30 days to do this, and then this side has 30 days to respond in written form, and then this side has 30 days to challenge that written response. So if everyone just takes the maximum amount of time, like, this could theoretically go until next September. Now, I don't think it will, but it could. And when Elliot Friedman reports that no one seems like they're in any itch and hurry to get this done, my guess is that's what he means, that everyone seems like they are taking the maximum amount of time to do all of the things they have to do before it gets to the point where it's in front of an arbitrator.
That's my guess right now is because the NHL hates news coming out during the Stanley Cup final, that's when it all gets resolved.
Well, I don't think the NHL, though, they're the ones in the negotiations. The NHL is negotiating with the NHLPA.
Yes.
The NHLPA is on behalf of Johansen, and the NHL is on behalf of the Flyers.
Yes.
So there's no way that the NHL would intentionally resolve this unless they wanted to just bury it. They wanted to bury it under the Stanley Cup. But if they don't want something to happen at a certain time, they are the ones doing the negotiating. They can choose when it gets released.
I could just see the PA taking the necessary amount of time to make it so that we finally get resolution around then. That's just my guess. But it could come tomorrow. It could come in a few months. We'll see how it all plays out.
I don't think it's coming tomorrow.
I don't think it's coming tomorrow either. I'm just saying possibly. It's possible. But it does. I was just looking at some salary cap stuff today. I was like,
yeah, don't worry about Ryan Johansen too much.
Right.
Don't worry about Johansen too much.
I'm not.
It'll get there, but for now, I would say it's easier just to assume that the Flyers don't have any of his money on their books because we have no idea what that contract settlement, if there's a settlement, will ultimately look like.
It was more about like, okay, well, if this isn't on the books because it's technically not, it was terminated,
right? Then
they have enough probably to not go to LTIR with Ellis.
Correct.
Like they had, like Grons was an emergency call up, stuff like that. So we'll see how it all goes. Mm-hmm. But it was just some house cleaning I wanted to get through before we get to the what have we learned portion of today's show, Charlie.
Yep.
We are 20 games in, and something that you brought up to me pre-show that I haven't really seen a ton of, but I've also been like, you had a great exchange on Twitter today. Like just saying like, hey, maybe, you know, Twitter, it's not even like people, you know, going to Blue Sky for political reasons or whatever. It's just like the algorithm is bad and it's bad for like the people who follow you want your content. And it's like, if it's not driving content, what's the point of Twitter? I'm not here for fun.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
exactly.
This is a business thing for me.
Yeah, there were two reasons to be on Twitter. Years ago, it was people will click your links, and it was the discourse is actually fun. Well, now, unless you do the following tab, which it seems like most people, for whatever reason, default to For You, even though it's terrible, seems like most people do that. If you use the For You algorithm, the algorithm does not push articles. Yeah. Anything that has a link, they bury. So fewer people are clicking on your links. So therefore, it's not as valuable as a article and content promotion medium. And if we're talking about quality of discourse, I mean, in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, the quality of discourse on that site has gone down dramatically. So it's like, why am I spending time here?
And it's like you and Kevin Kurz just having a conversation about professional stuff.
Yeah.
And one guy goes, well, maybe you suck. You ever think of that? And it's like, you just replied, thank you for proving my point entirely. Like, truly, thank you. And it was like, yes, exactly. But like, I think I've been seeing less of the mad Flyers fans as well, but it seems like some people are mad about where they are. And I guess maybe it's because, like, a couple of weeks ago, like, we were having fun. I had the tankathon thing up there in last place. And now they're kind of in that, not tanking, but not in the playoffs.
I believe they're ninth.
They're like a point out.
I think they're ninth. In terms of ninth worst, that's what their odds are.
Like, they're
still better than last year.
Yeah, they're in the top 10. Yeah. And it's just like, but they're also a point out of the playoffs. So maybe people are mad about that. They're in between again. Like, we're 20 games in. There's 62 to go. Lots can happen.
And also, if they keep playing the way they've been playing the last few games, they're going to fall further down.
Yeah, but like, are people mad? Like, I haven't got that sense. I think people are still like in the fact-finding time, but also when you're talking about social media discourse, there's very little room for like, well, nuance. I think that this, but then we have to find out. It's like, no, they suck. Or they're not bad enough.
There's also the fact that the algorithm now very much pushes anything. It pushes things that lack nuance because, that's just the way it is now.
Where do you think fans are? And do you think they are or should be mad? Because I got to tell you right now, I am very much I'm evaluating. I'm discouraged by the development path of some of the younger-ish players on this team. I also think there's reasons for it. This team is built on the strength of its wingers, and while that's valid, it's pretty hard to have a cohesive line without, like we said, centers who can play the game that those wingers are playing. Like, even if you want to, Noah Cates, Ryan Poehling, whatever, Scott Lawton, these are bottom six centers that you could get by with, definitely. Yeah. That's not the game our top 9 wingers are playing. Sure. These are offense first outside of Foerster, who is now on the fourth line, or at least is starting games on the fourth line. Yeah. Like, these are dudes who are trying to generate some offense, and the anchor of each of these lines isn't a guy who does that. It's tough to evaluate, but I could see maybe being upset about that. But are you seeing more anger about this team than you were expecting?
Well, it's funny. I'm not really seeing the anger, but I'm seeing people comment on the anger. And I think it's mostly because I don't follow the people who are angry, or I've muted them all. I don't know, one or the other. But I do get the sense that there is a frustration. And I get that because the expectation for this season coming off of last season, I wouldn't say it was sky high. I don't think anybody reasonably thought this team was going to be a cup contender, but I thought that they had a playoff chance. And hilariously enough, as I put in the outline when I was doing research for this show, they are only 1 point out of a playoff spot. So it's very funny. Like, the entire East is basically you have 6 teams that look really good so far. You have Tampa Bay, which looks okay, but they're at least a playoff team. And then you have everyone else. And the Flyers are in the everyone else bucket. So 8 teams are going to have to make the playoffs. Now, maybe Boston, they'll get the dead coach bump, and boom, then they're the 8th team. They were the team that I think it was expected to be the 8th team. But if they don't, maybe the Flyers could stay in a playoff race, even if they're just not very good. But I think the frustration / disappointment comes from the fact that the Flyers did make it to Game 82 last year, being in the mix. Really, up through the middle of March, they looked like, by the numbers, a legitimately good team. Not a great team, but a good team. They were driving play. They were winning, significantly more games than they lost. They had a positive goal differential, whatever. And then this year, it seems like they've regressed. And I talked about this, I think, when we were about 10 games in. And then they went on a little run. They won some games. They were playing a little bit better, not looking as bad. And now they're dipping again. Played against some good teams. They're losing games. I think where I'm at with the Flyers is that this year, the Flyers are the team we thought they were going to be last year. And that's just the way it is. And I guess it's disappointing because you want to see an upward trajectory. And it's like, well, you were up here last year. Now you're down here. That's bad. And it is, objectively speaking. But it probably wouldn't seem as bad if they just kind of flipped them. If this was last year and last year was this year, because then you're like, oh, well, they're better. They're still not great, but they're better. Overall, I don't think this is going to kill their chances of this working. It is disappointing they're not as good, but by the same token, they probably weren't this good last year either.
And that's the thing is last year we talked, like going into last season and like beginning of last year when we're talking about, okay, if they're going to be better than we expect. Because going in, I was like looking at the blue line going like, this is a bottom 5 team. And then we get a lot of things maybe we weren't expecting. The Sanheim York pair, outstanding. The goaltending, very good. Some young guys, better than we expected. And it was, all right, man, like if this is on the strength of Tyson Foerster looking like he's going to, maybe become Mark Stone.
Yeah.
Or Owen Tippett taking a step towards 30-plus goals. Like, if it's on the strength of those guys, dope. But if it's, hey, Sean Couturier's back, and things are good because of him, and Sanheim is, really good, and Travis Konecny's really good, and Carter Hart's really good, well, what does that do for us?
Right.
This year, I think we've gotten more of that. And, like, no, Carter Hart isn't here, but it's like, yeah, man, when Erson's on and Sanheim is on and Konechny's on and Coots is looking good, they win. And when it's on the young guys, they don't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's discouraging right now.
Oh, it is discouraging.
It's
absolutely.
like Tyson Foerster, again, like he looks to be building up a bit. He played top 6 minutes last night, but he's starting games on the fourth line. Owen Tippett has 4 goals. Travis Sanheim is 3rd on the team in scoring. He had 1 point through 7 games. Like, the second leading scorer is a 19-year-old who doesn't speak any English. Like, this isn't great right now when we're seeing when we're seeing Joel Farabee have 3 goals through 20 games. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a continuation of where he was at the end of last year rather than resetting and doing what he did for the first 2/3 of the season. Mm-hmm. These are like Morgan Frost is back in the coach's doghouse. He's not playing for the last 5 games. The only reason he even got into a game is because the 31-year-old guy who should be 3C, who is now the 1C, is banged up sometimes. Like, that's kind of where I'm not angry because, like, we know development isn't linear. And guys like Owen Tippett, if this is just a down year for him, I expect him to have 28, 30-some goals next year.
And he might end up there anyway.
Like he could get on he could have 10 and 12 and boom, we're right back to where we think we should be with him. But like I kind of think I know who he is. But the rest of these guys, we're trying to find that out. And through 20 games, the answer isn't what we want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's concerning. That said, it is 20 games. We do have another 3/4 of the season to go.
We do.
So guys can get better. But if a lot of this, I wouldn't say the success of the rebuild, because in the end, the success of this rebuild in a lot of ways is going to be driven by Matvei Michkov. And so far,
and future guys who haven't joined the team.
And I would say so far, Michkov, while he certainly hasn't been perfect, has been very, very productive as a rookie and has shown me nothing to tell me that like he's not going to ultimately be real good. He's not that yet. He's 19, but he's doing more than enough to be like, yeah, he's a guy with superstar potential.
15 points in 18 games on a team that doesn't score with no centers.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Currently don't really have any puck-moving defensemen either.
Yeah, that's all the puck-moving defensemen are hurt. You have one rover in Sanheim playing half the game, and everyone else is an off-the-glass and out guy.
Yeah, agreed.
That's what you have.
Agreed. But I think the overarching point that that I'm making here is it's more that like I do think there are things to be intrigued by. It's just some of those things to be intrigued by aren't great. Like, it's concerning that the young guys aren't playing well. They could play better. There's another 3/4 of a season to go, but yeah, like if Joel Farabee is nothing special, if this is just who he is, then that's one more guy who maybe he's part of it. Maybe you don't trade him. Maybe he sticks with the team, but he's not moving the needle. You know, if Owen Tippett is just a 25 to 30 goal scorer, like I don't think it's a bad contract. I don't think it kills them.
I think it's fine. But we wanted excess value.
It's not the surplus value contract. If Tyson Foerster doesn't, at some point over the next few years take a step, that's concerning. And obviously, it's not writing him off by saying he's off to a bad start. But if he was off to a good start, we'd be feeling a lot more excited about him.
We certainly would.
It's not like these 20 games lack value in terms of evaluating guys. It's just that I wouldn't go crazy over the fact that they've played poorly, that a lot of these key young guys have played poorly over the first, or at least underwhelmed relative to hopeful expectations. It's just that, this was one way where this could have been expedited. And so far, the guys you were hoping that were going to speed this thing up haven't sped this thing up.
Not to mention the worst case scenario for Jamie Drysdale has played out. He's hurt already. Like, just another one of those things that we were really hoping wouldn't be the case. And we have a lot more on what we've learned in the first 20 games, what we're hoping to learn for the rest of the season. But first, I got to tell you about Empire Today. 1-800-588-2300 Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and that price match guarantee. Empire Today, I've been telling you for months, they're the best place to get new flooring. Everyone knows it, so of course they've got copycats. But copycats can't beat Empire Today on quality, service, speed. So they just advertise low-quality products that Empire wouldn't carry. Empire Today won't promise the lowest prices, because anyone who does that, they're putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in their own. The Empire philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. The Empire product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles, and you can see those styles with the virtual floor designer. Perfect way to see how new floors will look in any space. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. So schedule a free in-home estimate today, and all listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHLY for details. While we're here, got to tell you about Rothman Orthopedics. That's right, because if you have aching joints, hands cramping, your back's out of whack, Rothman has you. At Rothman Orthopedics, practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 50 years. Their mission, high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research leading to new treatments and better outcomes. Each Rothman doc is laser focused on their specialty. Hip, knee, spine, you name it, they've got someone for each body part right in your backyard, so you can get back to dropping the gloves, scoring goals, whatever your specialty is. That's what Rothman wants you to help get back to you, because Rothman Orthopedics specializes in you. Rothman Orthopedics, specializing in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. All right. So let's get to some of these individuals. I got to start where all conversations about the Flyers begin and end, apparently, Charlie. Morgan Frost. We've been doing this for so long.
Yeah, it never
Morgan
ends.
Frost.
The Morgan Frost conversation
we always say,
never
like, one of
ends.
the biggest nights of our careers was that 2017 draft.
Mm-hmm. Was it? I mean, it was a cool party.
We thought it was a
cool party.
We thought
I had a good time.
Listen, we had Keith Jones on the show. We were there with WIP. We thought it was a real launching pad for us and the Flyers. And then, of course, things went the ways they went for both us and the Flyers. And here we are. But they drafted Morgan Frost on that night so long ago. And it feels like we've been having this conversation about him ever since.
At least since like 2000.
Yeah, well,
like
for the
2020,
last,
I would
say. For the last 3-4 years.
Yeah,
probably.
2020, 2021 is when the Morgan Frost debate really kicked off.
So he's been scratched in 4 of the last 5, and today shows up in 32 Thoughts. Elliot Friedman, his written article, The 32 Thoughts, says, player team that seem a match, Morgan Frost and Chicago. Frost didn't play Wednesday against Carolina, the 4th game of the last 5 he's watched from the press box. He's not a complainer, prefers to keep any displeasure behind closed doors, but players want to play. Obviously, any dance needs partners who deal, but the Blackhawks, in dire need of centers, are the one team that makes sense for him. I, in the outline, highlighted and underlined, but the Blackhawks in dire need of centers, because that cracks me up. You know who else is in dire need of centers?
The Flyers sure are.
The team he currently plays for. But I get it. Like, for whatever reason, he and John Tortorella, and like, listen, again, this season especially, I'm up to here with it. I don't care anymore. But for the good of finding out who some of these wingers are, they need a center, at least one who drives some offense. And Frost, when he's playing well, which he hasn't to this point, that's what he does. Yeah, sure, trade him to Chicago. You know what? They're in town tomorrow. Have your conversation then. But like right now, he's got to be in the lineup because there's no one else.
Yeah, I want to talk about this report, which isn't even really a report from Elliott. It's amusing, but Elliott is a pro, and he does
space musing.
He doesn't make musings just because they popped in his head one day, and especially he doesn't make musings just because they popped in his head one day and then put it as the number four thought. It's pretty far up the list.
Yeah.
Now, here's kind of where I'm at in terms of parsing where this comes from. I don't think it's coming from the Flyers. Reason being, everything I've heard from the Flyers is that they're not itching to trade Morgan Frost. That's not something that, like, look, if somebody calls them up and bowls them over, they'll trade him. But just because John Tortorella is scratching Morgan Frost right now, that does not mean that the Flyers are actively shopping Morgan Frost. I'm kind of backed up on that by the fact that I believe it was 2 days ago, Kevin Kurz of The Athletic wrote an article basically saying, like, the time has come for these two sides to kind of probably part ways. Then later that day, Kevin Kurz tweeted something out basically saying, like, that article that I wrote wasn't saying that the Flyers are interested in trading him. Like, I would think, if anything, it was going to come from the player. Knowing, and to be clear, I have not talked to Kevin about this at all. Knowing the way teams work, the first thing that popped in my head when I read that tweet was someone from the team DM'd him and was like, yo, dude, why are you saying that we're going to trade Morgan Frost? We're not going to trade Morgan Frost. That's bad information if you got it from somewhere. And then he puts out on Twitter I'm not saying it's from the team, to make it clear that, like, the team maybe reached out to me and said, we're not trying to trade him. So I don't think it's coming from the team. I do wonder if it's coming from Frost. Not from Frost specifically, but maybe from his agent. Basically wanting to put it out there that, like, look, Morgan, and the way it's worded about, Morgan's a guy who doesn't complain. This
is very much from an agent.
He puts everything behind closed doors. He's being the good soldier, but you see what's going on here. And hey, maybe I've had a conversation with Chicago's front office and they might be interested. Poke, Danny. Maybe pick up the phone and call them and see if there could be a fit. Just knowing the way this stuff works, I don't think this is leaked from the Flyers, and I don't think this is Elliott just making stuff up.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, this may have been a soft push from the Frost camp to be like, our guys tried to be real nice about this, but he's kind of getting fed up.
And, like, if I'm Frost's agent, I have to be doing this. Again, like, yes, restricted, but he is in a contract year. He cannot get paid a substantial raise or anything at all if he does not play. Yeah. He needs to be on the ice in order to produce, in order to get a big raise.
This is very true.
And the agent wants his percentage of that raise. Like, it all just makes too much sense. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, man, he's not a complainer. And we've seen it. Like, he's not a guy.
He's been very professional and mature about all of this in terms of not rocking the boat.
And good for him. But there is going to be, like, an inflection point at some time, whether it's now, whether it's the trade deadline, whether it's RFA negotiations this summer, where it's like, what is this? I said this, I think, on the mailbag I did last week. At some point, this is like the relationship conversation. Where is this going? What are we?
Yeah.
Where do you see us in a year?
It's a fair
5
point.
years, 10 years. Yeah. At some point, we have to have this conversation.
Agreed.
It's not just going to be, sign bridge deals until you're 32 and we're going to scratch you a third of the season for your entire career. He's not going to go for that. He's going to want some stability at some point on and off the ice. They have to figure something out.
And I believe Anthony DeMarco, I think he wrote an article yesterday or the day before basically pointing out that, look, the Flyers aren't looking to trade Morgan Frost, but the next deal is probably going to be another bridge deal.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Morgan Frost would rather the next deal not be another bridge deal.
He's, let's see, he'll turn 26 in May. Yeah, he doesn't want a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what dudes are looking for at this time.
Exactly.
Now, because of his lack of production and maybe lack of consistent ice time, he'll want this one to be shorter so he can go out and have a prove-it situation. But he will want, I would assume, a situation in which he believes he can fairly be given the opportunity to prove it.
And to be clear, this is an important part of this one, because I do think that John Tortorella was right to make a distinction between the treatment that he gave to Morgan Frost the previous 2 years and the treatment he gave to them this year. Those previous 2 years, you could make a strong case in both of those years that Morgan Frost did not deserve to be scratched, or at least did not deserve to be the first button that Tortorella pushed in terms of scratching a guy. And it was because Torts, number one, just wasn't sold on the kid, and number two, I think wanted to push his buttons, wanted to try to get that rise out of him that he ultimately got out of him in January. That was part of it. This time, however, it's really hard to make the case that he didn't deserve to be scratched. He was playing really, really bad. Like, if you want to make the argument like, oh, well, maybe Noah Cates is playing worse, or maybe Tyson Foerster is playing worse, fair.
Sure.
Like, we can have those cases, but Morgan Frost was playing poorly enough to warrant a scratch.
He was in the conversation.
He was very much in the fair conversation, looking at the numbers, looking at the eye test, looking at everything. So I'm not going to look at the situation and say that this is a controversy that John Tortorella has manufactured.
Oh, no.
Maybe the previous 2 years you could say that. This time it's kind of on Frost. However, if you're Morgan Frost, maybe you're just exhausted by it.
I would assume, and that's the previous 2 years. This is the sort of, as sometimes it's called, the mental warfare, but it's Torts trying to bring something out of Frost to get him to another level.
Yes.
This is, dude, you suck right now.
Yeah.
I can dress 12 forwards as 6 defensemen. You're not one of those 12 forwards. And again, sure, sit Cates. They did that to start the season. It was Luchenko over Cates. He was the odd man out to start the year. They were doing that. And you want to keep sitting Cates? Sure, why not? He hasn't been very good either.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is merit based.
Yeah.
This is straight up your play.
This
This isn't me trying to get more out of you for the future. This is right now. You're not very good.
Yeah, and even we've been talking about it for the last week when we talked about Morgan Frost being scratched. When we mentioned about, well, they got to get him back in the lineup at some point, it's all about what Morgan Frost could be. You got to get him back in because Michkov needs a center that can score, and Morgan Frost is the one guy
hypothetically
who plausibly can score. Now, he hasn't this year, but he can. We've seen it. We're not talking about you need to get Morgan Frost back in the lineup because he deserves to be back in the lineup.
Nah.
It's all about, well, he can theoretically play better because we know he has in the past. There's no part of me that thinks the scratching is unfair. Let me put it that way.
No, there was an argument in the past where it's is he being treated fairly? Now it's, I don't see another option.
Mm-hmm.
He has to play because look at what we're doing at center. That said, with this, let's run with the idea of maybe, let's call it Chicago, a potential trade. Chicago, one, what kind of value could Frost possibly have? This dire need of centers thing for Chicago, okay. But the Flyers are a team in dire need of centers, and they're choosing not to play this guy.
Yeah.
What kind of value could he possibly have?
I think he has value. I do. And based on people I've talked to, over the summer, during the early portion of the year on road trips, there were teams that would have been interested in him last offseason. The Flyers basically said, we're not really interested in trading him. And they're like, okay, I guess we need to make other plans. But I would think that if there was interest in him during the summer, during the offseason, it's not like those teams are going to be like, well, he stunk for 16 games, so we don't like him anymore. There's still going to be teams that believe that, maybe the relationship with Tortorella has run its course. Maybe it's just not a fit there. But we think Morgan Frost isn't an amazing player. I don't think there's anybody trading for him that thinks he's going to miraculously turn into a 90-point guy with him on their team. But they think he's a quality NHL center who can be in your middle six. And if teams have weakness down the middle, as a team like Chicago does, maybe there's a fit. And I just, bringing it back to the original point I made, I just get the sense that Elliot Friedman tidbit in the 32 Thoughts was Morgan Frost camp maybe putting a little bit of a nudge onto the Flyers to be like, look, if you're not going to play him, we've unearthed a couple teams that might have some interest. Maybe pick up the phone.
Flyers don't have much interest in trading him. His agent's sitting there like, well, why not?
Well, why exactly? Why not?
You don't have much interest in playing him.
Exactly.
What purpose is he serving you?
Yeah.
We think he looks real good in a suit. Like, we like him up there. He's good for morale in the press. Like that, these aren't things that teams hold on to guys for.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the Morgan Frost saga. And like, if you're tired of hearing about Morgan Frost,
well, you're tired of talking about him.
Just think how tired I am of talking about this guy. He's not very good. He's okay. He's a 40-point player. You need those dudes. But he clearly doesn't fit into the long-term plans here. Like, I don't know how much more obvious the coach whose job it is to determine who fits and who doesn't has to make it before we, like, S or get off the pot here. Mm-hmm. But the conversation will continue until morale improves, Charlie.
Apparently it will.
Speaking of dudes who I guess are centers for this team, what is Noah Cates?
I don't know because it's not. I thought he had a good few games last week. He was showing something. He had that really nice stretch pass. I believe it was to create a Konecny goal. Did some good work before that. On the goal prior. This is in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. I thought he was having some good games. Now he's kind of back to just sort of being there. He makes some plays here and there. His underlying numbers this year are trash, which is weird because they've always been real good. This year they're real bad. And he's obviously not scoring. Now, the Flyers, I think, are not ready to give up on him. John Tortorella still really likes him. You talk to players on the team, they see his value. I still like Noah Cates as a bottom sixer. However, I've pretty much given up on any chance he's going to score at the NHL level. Like, he could be a fourth line, maybe third line defensive winger / center who can play both positions in a pinch. The guy I'm thinking of, I'm blanking on the name, but he did kind of play that role for Pittsburgh a few years ago. He ended up in Seattle. It's a 3-letter name where it's like, two last names with the hyphen.
Oh, yeah.
But one of those guys, that just might be all Cates is. I like Noah Cates, but I'm getting to the point where I no longer think he has much in the way of offensive upside beyond like 20 points a year.
That's the listen, we all saw that 38-point season and we're like, maybe there is something here. That now is falling under the you play enough minutes, you're going to get some points. And that's the thing.
He did show things in that season. He made some plays. He made more plays then, and it wasn't just the ice time, than he's made over the past 2 years, to be sure.
Yeah. And he also had considerably better line mates.
Zach Aston Reese. That's the guy I was thinking
Aston Reese. There you go.
ZAR. Yeah, he could be a Zach Aston Reese.
In his in Noah Cates' defense, he is +8 in his last 6 games.
Okay.
They haven't won a ton of them.
Okay.
And
hey, sure.
They're outscoring the other team when he's out there.
He's still real bad by expected goals.
Yeah.
But hey, if actual goals are going up, that's good.
I just in his last 75 games, last season into this season now, 21 points. Mm-hmm. Like you said, he's got maybe a 20, 25-point ceiling. That is what this guy is. Yeah. And I just wonder, now maybe he has the best upside of a bottom 6. Okay, he's not going to score for you, but he can drive play. He's maybe isn't just killing time when he's out there waiting for Mish and Konecny to get back on the ice. Maybe he's more than that. But it's just like, how many of these dudes do we actually need? And again, if we had to choose quality of player, you probably move on from Scott Laughton. But I believe Scott Laughton is going to be the next Paul Holmgren for this team. So that's not going to happen. Ryan Poehling, they gave another contract to. They have so many dudes who just aren't going to score. In a lineup that desperately needs to score, eventually you're going to have to make decisions on these guys. How close are we to making a decision that he should or shouldn't be on this?
Well, I don't think they are close because I think they like him. I do think it's a reasonable critique to say that they are Noah Cates' best fit is on a Flyers team that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I think that is probably fair, where if you had a Flyers team where you had high-end talent and 3 lines that could score, Noah Cates is a great fit on that team.
Sure.
Because he could be on your 4th line. He's good defensively. He can kill penalties. You can put him out there when when the other team pulls their goalie and it's 6-on-4 or 6-on-5. On that team, Noah Cates has an obvious fit. On this team, I think it's fair to say that when a Flyers team is struggling to score, Noah Cates just kind of plays into that obvious flaw. So I don't think the Flyers are going to get rid of Noah Cates because I think they like him. He's obviously not that expensive. They like his versatility. They really like his work ethic and his personality. They think he's a good dude to have on the team in terms of all the intangible things. That said, I understand the critique of, why do you need another guy on this team that can't score? I get it. I get it. And maybe he would be better served playing, like being a 4th liner on Colorado.
He's like a Belmar, like
or Carolina or something like that.
Like I look at him and it's like, yeah, man, P.E. Belmar was a great player to have on a good team. On a team like this, and look at who he played with. Colorado, he's in Vegas, he's in Tampa. Yeah. Those things made sense for him. Yeah. That's the kind of player Cates seems to be, and maybe better. Like maybe not as fast, but like maybe a better player than the dudes we've had in those roles, like the Darryl Powell types. Yeah. But
he might ultimately be better than those guys.
Yeah, but that team is so far away in my mind that if we can't find another one of those guys between now and 2028, like, what is the point of that?
I think where I'm at is like, I couldn't bring myself to be mad if they keep Noah Cates because I think he's a perfectly fine player who doesn't take up that much cap space, who has value, who generally, aside from this year, drives play at 5-on-5 and is never going to be a guy based on what he's historically been good at who's going to cost very much. That said, he's not someone who, he can't be a player that you have as like, well, 5 years down the line, we have to have Noah Cates on this team. I'm at the point where I don't see much upside. Though I don't see much downside to keeping him, I don't see much upside to, holding on to him like gold bullion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's we were debating, and there's an age difference here, so it's not an apples to apples conversation, but we're debating Travis Konecny this offseason. Like, is he a guy we desperately need 5 years from now? And he has been about a point a game player for the last 2+ seasons. That was a debate and a legitimate one.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? We're doing this with Noah Cates. No disrespect here, but these are different stratosphere players. Like we are, we're talking about several levels.
They are, but I mean, the obvious difference is that with Noah Cates, you don't have to give him $9 million.
We don't have to give him almost $9. Yes,
that's the clear.
But
difference.
It's just like, what are we doing with some of these guys? I just very much am like, how have you not made? It's not even about Noah Cates and Morgan Frost individually. I just feel like there should be more roster turnover by now. And there really hasn't been in the last couple of years. And I think that more than anything
is where the frustration
is. Where people are frustrated.
Right.
Like, I think if you watch this team against Carolina or Colorado and you get mad, like, you need to be on medicine. You seriously need to be medicated because those teams are cup contenders and the Flyers have flat out said, even making the playoffs, like, oh, that'd be nice. But, like, yeah, it's not really our stated goal here.
They've said it out loud.
Like, they have told us.
If anything, they were the ones putting cold water on everyone else.
They told us, like, don't worry about Michkov. He might not be that good right away. Now, that was, like, obviously crazy.
Yeah, and
like,
that was certain.
That was playing a game.
That was in furtherance of another thing, which was we don't want the hype to be too high on the game. Whereas I do believe because there's something to be said, like, put it this way with Michkov. They were saying that publicly. You talk to Flyers people privately, and they were through the moon excited about it. Whereas
the GM and president don't go carry your bags through JFK if they're like, he's going to be all right.
I mean, Keith Jones said in one of those standard videos, like, we think he's going to be a superstar. Yes. That was the first time any of them had straight up said that on the record. And that was one thing that raised my eyebrows. I'm like, oh, so So publicly, you're saying like, oh, we don't think he's going to be that good this year. And privately, you're like, yeah, he's a superstar.
Yeah, he's going to get there.
The playoff thing, though, they would say publicly, we don't know if playoffs are a thing. When you would talk to them privately, they would go even further. And they'd be like, yeah, I think we're going to take a step back this year, even with Michkov. So I think that is sincere. That is very sincere.
Yeah. I want to get to Tyson Foerster and some other guys, but let's talk about today's presenting sponsor, Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I've been doing all of my betting this year through Bet365, and I am damn happy with the app. I think you will be too. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. They live stream 780,000 events each year. You get the early payouts on the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. They're one of the pioneers of in-game betting. I am a big fan of Bet365 and their app, and I think you will be too. We love being presented by Bet365 each and every day here. So download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. It's fun. You're having a great time when you're placing your sports bets. You're doing so responsibly. You know what isn't fun? Home remodeling, all sorts of household projects. And that's why you need C-Jam Construction, family-owned and operated home remodeler specializing in decks, bathrooms, and flooring. Their goal is to help their clients alleviate the challenges and frustrations that come with home remodeling. If you own a home, if you've had to do any work, big or small projects, you know it's a pain and probably puts a big strain on whoever is living with you, your significant other, roommates, whatever it might be. That's why you need to go with C-Jam Construction. And be sure to mention PHLY to receive 15% off when you call 856-329-2933 about your next home project. See their full selection of luxury vinyl plank flooring and learn more about the products and warranties on the website, cjamconstruction.com. All right, Charlie. The next guy, it's like, these are just some of the dudes I think need to be spoken about. Like Owen Tippett, it's not going well right now, but I think I have an idea of who he is.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about Owen Tippett, and he's slotting in where I need him to. He'll be fine, probably.
He's been disappointing.
I think
yes, the big disappointment with Owen Tippett is that we know he's good.
Yes.
We know he's fine. And I'm not worried that that's going to be a bad contract. The disappointment is for that to be a great contract, he has to take a step up at some point. And we are now through a quarter of the season, and it sure don't look like 2024, 2025 is going to be the year he takes the step up.
And that is a major disappointment. Now, ultimately, all this maybe works in the Flyers' favor. They get a top 10, top 8 pick or something. People are happy. That'll be good.
I mean, people will never be happy, but they will be happy if they get a real good prospect at number 7.
Absolutely. But Tyson Foerster is a dude who we have talked about repeatedly as when we would say, or you would write, you know, they just seriously lack top-end talent, and you would list guys maybe with that potential, and Tyson Foerster wouldn't be on that list. And the Flyers would say to you, wait a second, we think Tyson Foerster is a top-end talent.
That guy.
And honestly, last year,
he showed something.
He really showed us, whether it was when he wasn't scoring but keeping himself in the lineup through that two-way play, and then suddenly 20-goal rookie season. That's pretty nice for a dude who didn't score in his first 15 games. Like, that's a good pace. Yeah. And now here he is. And I think we've seen over the last few games him kind of working back towards what he was.
Scored a couple goals.
Scored some goals. The one game we watched together, he won like 3 battles that directly led to like 2 goals and a couple other chances. Yeah. But he's still starting games on the 4th line. His minutes have bumped up the last few nights, but starting out on the 4th line, it's just not what we're hoping for. Are you looking right now at Tyson Foerster as, hey, development ain't linear and there's plenty of season left? Or, all right, this is one of those, he's back in that maybe second tier of prospects for this team? Or, I mean, maybe not prospects, but NHL-ish guys.
I am certainly not ready to write off Tyson Foerster after 20 meh games. Really, it's probably more like 15 because last 4 or 5 he's been better. So I'm not willing to write him off about it. And you're right, development isn't linear. If anything, the shining example of development not being linear is Travis Sanheim. We're watching that in real time about a guy who is developing maybe a bit later than we ideally want. Travis Konecny, another guy who developed a bit later than we ideally would want. So development isn't linear. I'm not ready to say that Tyson Foerster is never going to become a dominant play-driving wing who you can depend upon for 30 goals and 70, 80-ish points a year. That's possible. That's a plausible outcome. That said, when things don't happen quickly, it does make the best possible outcome less likely. Like that was the whole point I made last year. And so far, Emil Andre has been impressive. But I made the point that, yes, I was higher on Emil Andre in the summer of 2023 versus the summer of 2024, because in the summer of 2023, there was still the possibility that he was going to show up to training camp, earn an NHL job right out of Europe, and be real good right off the jump. The fact that he didn't made me lower the likelihood that he was going to be an impact defenseman. Now, I think I'm still probably lower on him than I was, at least in terms of plausible upside, then versus now, but he's playing better. Now I'm back on board as him being a possible second pair defenseman at the NHL level because he's looked good. With Foerster, he could, in a year or two, take the leap we were hoping for that he was going to take to start this season. But the fact that he hasn't does raise viable concerns that it might never come around. I've always said this. I say this on Twitter. I say this on these shows. I really think about things in terms of plausible outcomes. There's a 10% chance he's going to be a stud. There's a 20% chance he's going to be a quality top half of the lineup player. There's a 30% chance he's going to be a useful NHLer. Then the rest of the percentage points that he's going to be an outright bust. With Foerster, I came into this year thinking there was maybe a, 10% chance he was going to be a top of the lineup impact core guy. Maybe now I'm down to 6 or 7%. Still think it's there. I'm not writing it off, but I do think that I would feel a lot better if he had done it in the first 15, 20 games of the season. He hasn't, and that worries me a bit. Not to the point where I'm writing him off, but to the point where, generally speaking, Bill, good outcomes are better than bad outcomes in terms of projecting future outcomes.
And that's he's still quite young. He won't be 23 until January 18th. But this is a league where dudes at 2021 kind of show you if they're going to be stars.
Yeah.
And
the thing is, he did show some potential of that outcome last year. It's just this year we're not seeing it.
And it just kind of lowers okay, man, maybe he is a dude who scores a ton for you on a third line and is a hell of a checker too. But last year I'm thinking, him and Mish with a top center, maybe that's a top line.
Maybe that's enough.
Because he is a Mark Stone.
JV Mark Stone, basically,
Okay, even if he's not a 40-goal scorer, if he's a 25-goal scorer, but can be that type of two-way player, he's a top line, if not top 6 player for you.
Yeah.
And maybe not the case now, and that's disappointing.
It's not that it's
and
out
not
of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
It's just that
lowering the percentage chance.
You bump the percentage down a bit, wherever it was previously. Yeah, I would say you got to bump it down a percentage point or two, because where would it be if he did start out this season playing the same way he played in the second half? It would be a few percentage points higher.
It would be like, oh man, we need to sign him up now.
Exactly.
When can we get him to an extension? Let's do it before it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Now it's I don't know what he is.
Yeah, I mean, Cam York is the guy who you're he's the guy they're probably going to open the checkbook for, whereas Tyson Foerster, who also has his contract expiring at the end of the season, is the guy where they say, maybe we're going to bridge you again.
Nah, maybe it's not quite there yet.
Maybe not.
I want to at least still talk about Farabee, but I think we have a decent number of super chats, so I'm going to hit those now and then see where we are once we're done the super chats. 4 of them. So let's hit Will Winning first. Frost for Kuzmenko. Flyers need some left wingers. They do.
I wouldn't go for Kuzmenko personally.
As much as they need left wingers, I'm not all that interested in devoting resources to more wingers. Whether it's in a trade or whatever, I would rather just see all right, what's Denver Barkey? That sort of I want to see what this next wave of dudes is. Like, yeah, we drafted some centers. You know what a lot of centers, guys who are drafted as centers, turn out to be? Wingers.
Yeah.
Because they're not NHL centers.
Yeah, I think Luchenko is definitely a center.
Yeah, Luchenko's value is he does what he does at center.
Yes, but there are other guys who they're going to take who, you might draft as a center. You draft Berglund, you draft Ruohonen. Maybe neither of those guys ultimately are centers. I think they have higher expectations of Berglund definitely sticking, but what's his upside? That's the question. But going back to Will Winning's question, Kuzmenko, so he just, to me, doesn't really fit. If we're talking about Kuzmenko, the guy who was on Vancouver and now is on Calgary, I'm assuming that's the Kuzmenko we're talking about. There isn't like a Kuzmenko prospect that he's referring to. Like, he's 28 years old. He's been hyper inconsistent pretty much everywhere. Like, had the great first year in Vancouver.
I did not realize he was 28.
Yeah, then tails off. They trade him to Calgary. He's great in the final couple months of the year with Calgary. And now this year he's struggling again. So, like, I don't know. Do I want to add another super inconsistent person when I trade away the super inconsistent person?
That's to the idea of, because I forgot to ask this earlier. I started just with the idea of like Frost as a value, but just the idea of trading Frost.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's say it's Chicago. Like, Chicago, not in, like, they're dead last in points percentage right now. They're not in the surrendering future premium assets.
Not premium, but like, would they be willing to throw the Flyers a 3rd round pick? Maybe.
That's the, like, it's not going to be like their first or second.
No,
that ain't happening.
I can't
They
imagine.
do have, I have it written down. They have Toronto's first. I doubt it's that.
Doubt.
They have the Stars second.
You might be able to squeeze a 2nd round pick.
The Stars, that's
if you get into
likely a later
2nd
2nd round pick.
Yeah, maybe you can squeeze a 2nd round pick out of Chicago, because Chicago is bad. But in fairness, Chicago added some guys this past offseason. They expect it to not be as bad. And I think that's where their concern and their frustration stems from. So could there be a fit there? Maybe. I like the idea from Will Winning about maybe if you're going to do a 1-for-1, maybe trade for a left wing. It doesn't have to be a center for center trade. I just don't particularly think Kuzmenko fits.
Maybe that's the idea. And maybe a little bit of an older guy like that is the thing. I'm just like, in general, not just looking at Chicago, it's going to be, in all likelihood, a change of scenery, player for player deal, right? Probably not a future assets thing, because I don't know what sort of...
It could be a pick.
Okay.
I could see a pick.
All right.
If the Flyers... Look, let me put it this way. If the Flyers continue to hold to their stance that we don't really want to trade Morgan Frost, then yes, it would have to be a player for player. If the Flyers ultimately make the decision they are open to trading Morgan Frost, then they could certainly pick up a pick for him. Because there would be multiple teams willing to give them a pick for Morgan Frost.
All right. Who is Mike Mall is next. His super chat. Looking for some hope. What are differences between Danny's Flyers rebuild and the Yzer plan in Detroit?
Well, I mean,
they haven't decided to turn the corner yet.
Yeah,
and they haven't done it prematurely.
And I do think one of the big differences in my mind between what Steve Yzerman is doing in Detroit and what he's done from a drafting perspective and what the Flyers seem to be doing. It seems like the Flyers under Briere have been more willing to take big swings in the draft. My big issue, I don't have too many problems with what Yzerman has done in Detroit in terms of stockpiling assets and doing that way. I feel like too many times when given the opportunity to pick between a high upside guy with a little bit more risk at the top of the draft and a guy who is very likely to be a 2nd-line center, but like that's all he's going to be, I feel like they've often gone with that guy. They've gone with guys like Nate Danielson and Casper and people like that who I never saw star-level upside. I think the Michkov pick shows that Briere is willing to take bigger swings than Yzerman has been willing to take in Detroit. Luchenko, to be honest, like, look, personally, I would have rather than taken Zeev Buyin. That was my guy. But if you're talking about picking between Luchenko and Konsta Helenius, I think Luchenko is the bigger swing. He has better physical tools. He has, I think, a better chance of being an impact scoring top 6 play driving center than Helenius, who I think really only had the chance of being a play driving center who's probably a grade 2C. So that's my difference between those two rebuilds. I think the Flyers are taking bigger swings on draft day than Steve Yzerman did in Detroit.
All right. From Patrick Does that say Spear? Something I've wondered, is Charlie still a fan of the team, or is he just a capital J journalist for them now? We've talked about this.
We've talked about this quite a lot. I mean, I am a capital J journalist. I think what I will say, and probably this manifests in a similar way as it would for a fan, like, I want the Flyers to be good, and when they make moves and do things that I think it makes it less likely that they're going to be good, like, that frustrates me. But it frustrates me not from the level of, like, I'm going to go crazy if they win a Stanley Cup.
Pick it outside.
It comes from two places. It comes from, number one, incompetence annoys me. So, like, that bothers me on a level of just, like, that really ticks me off when I see people doing dumb things when they could be doing smart things.
Charlie believes in a meritocracy.
I sure do. And the other reason is it's a heck of a lot more fun to cover a good team. I would love to cover a great hockey team.
I would like to know what that's. I would love to know what that's like.
It'd be fun.
I look back on 2020, those couple of weeks leading up to the COVID stoppage and then the beginning of the bubble. And man, that was fun. And it should have been more than 6 weeks, 6 months apart for us to have this sort of fun.
I also think, and I mean, people like you, obviously, but really the fan base as a whole, I think Flyers fans and the city of Philadelphia deserves a really good Flyers team.
I think I personally do.
You personally do. Yeah. But I do. I think the fans deserve it. And I think that we should be holding the organization accountable if they are not delivering that. That said, I don't want to devolve into constant anger.
We appreciate those of you watching on TV. Head over to allphly.com for more of the show as we wrap up here. The final super chat from Corey. He says, in you guys' opinion, how likely is it that Danny uses all 3 first-round picks in the next draft? I feel like they'll be used trades at the deadline.
Okay, well, I
don't know if it's like...
I don't think it's going to be the deadline.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be trading away first-round picks.
I think it's more like what we saw at the draft.
I think they're going to make trades
this past draft
in the offseason.
Yeah.
Lead up to the draft, the month of June, the month of July. I think it's unlikely they make all 3 picks. But I don't...
How many teams make 3 first-round picks?
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to trade one of those away at the trade deadline. I think they will trade one of those away in the offseason.
Yeah, and the first thing that comes to mind is that Boston year where they had the 3 straight.
Oh, yeah.
And it just went to hell.
Yeah, all those guys. What was it? Zaboral, DeBrusk, and Zaxanishin.
Yeah. It was great for them.
It was great. It was great fun for us.
Yeah, we got TK,
I enjoyed it
so
immensely.
that was cool. Real quick on Joel Farabee. He shows up on the, it's not on the Athletic trade board, I think, but it was Sarah Volley's.
Oh, yeah, Sarah Volley, yeah.
What is Joel Farabee?
It's a good question. And I don't think the Flyers know either. Because if the Flyers could get him back to where he was in the first half of last year, I think they would happily, tie their wagon to Joel Farabee and say, you're part of this. You're a real good player. Problem is, we haven't seen that guy since they came back from the All-Star break. And I have to believe it's still in there. I don't think that was a total fluke. I think he was legitimately playing really well, and it's in there somewhere, but I don't know where it is because you're really only seeing flashes of it. And it's got to be real frustrating. It's got to be frustrating for Farabee, to be sure, but it's got to be really frustrating to the Flyers because they know he's better than what he's shown. They have to believe it. They've seen it with their own 2 eyes. It's just, how do you get it out of them? And they haven't been able to find a way yet.
It's when he came up in 1920, he showed us some flashes. He had the 20-goal season the following year in the shortened season, 20 goals in 55 games. And then last year, the 50 points, 22 goals, but it's pretty much all prior to the All-Star break, and we just haven't seen that guy consistently enough. Yeah. And now he is, he'll be 25 in February. Like, we're talking about dudes who are in the prime of their career, and they're just not giving it to us on a consistent enough basis. I get where fans are frustrated with individuals like that.
Yeah, and I'm not ready to, and I guess this is probably where I differ from fans. Like, I'm not ready to just be like, well, it's 20 games. These guys don't fit. Trade them away now. Like, I'm not ready to go the Bob Clark route because that's what Bob Clark would have done.
Yes,
Bob Clark would have been like, I'm sick of this guy. Get him out of here.
Justin Williams is hurt. I'm mad at him for being hurt. Time to trade him.
Like, let's shake things up. I'm not ready to do that. And fair if you are, because you're allowed to want things to happen.
That's how we were raised.
It's just, I'm not ready to do that. That said, if this continues over the length of the season, there are multiple guys in this team. You wonder if, like, yeah, maybe there is just a need for a change of scenery, and it's just not going to work out here.
All right, and that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We are off tomorrow, but I do have some special content for you. Sat down, had about a 20-minute conversation with Rachel Dury today. She is back as one of our, hopefully, weekly guests, CTO of Betalytics. She's an ESPN contributor. She's worked for the Canucks and the Devils. You know Rachel. She is back, and we're going to air that tomorrow. It's dropping on our YouTube page, so make sure you're subscribed right here to the YouTube page. Set that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. We'll be back live Saturday with pre- and post-game for the Chicago game, so we'll have you for that. Charlie will join us post-game. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. That's basically where I do all my tweeting now.
Yeah, and if you've watched the entire show and you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button.
Hit the like button, damn it.
That little thumbs up button.
Do it.
We'd much appreciate it.
And make sure you follow the podcast as well, wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. That's it for us. I'm Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until Saturday, let's go Flyers.
We all silly like the mayor.